He's the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. I love this guy.
It didn't even take a minute, and I got a zing.
I
was
guy.
trying to be nice about your voice, and oh my God, what can I do to help facilitate today? And
he's an amazing guy. We're going to talk about the Jefferson Vineyard sale on the show today. 400 acres in Albemarle County. Good Lord, that's massive. Just under $12 million, this purchase. Neil Williamson, if you go to the Free Enterprise Forum website, has got, the former editor in me sees somewhere between 900 and 1,200 words this man has punched out this morning. And anyone who puts out this much copy like Neil does should be commended and saluted, because when you're churning copy like this, it is not an easy task. It's not an easy task.
Got a picture in it, though.
The picture is him? Oh, on the top, yes. Do we have a photo credit? Do we have a cut line photo credit on this photo?
On the bottom, under the signature line.
Oh, we do. Photo credit Jefferson Vineyards.
Look at all this geeky stuff we got going on here.
Judah Wickower is the director. Evidently, we have a Cape Crusader.
Potentially.
A hero fighting for housing affordability.
There you go. Well, we've got two heroes fighting for housing. We got three heroes, actually, at the table fighting for housing affordability. The three of us.
I certainly.
I just happened to
that mindset.
I just happened to have too much time on my hands and figured out how to tape a mask onto a set of eyeglasses.
Yona's out of town.
My wife is out of town.
Judah Wickower is the director. We'll rock and roll, Judah, when you're ready. Judah, Lisa's watching. Lisa Costello's watching. Guys, good Friday morning. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. It's a pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love Seville Network on a show presented by Yes Realty Partners. Today's show is dynamite, and it's dynamic. You, the viewer and listener, can help shape the discussion. And today's program features the king of content, Sir Neil Williamson himself, the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. There are few people in this community as connected as Neil Williamson. The guy legitimately reads government documents. I'm just going to say that again. He legitimately reads government documents. He may be the only one in this community that reads government documents. Well, I'll give Sean Tubbs some props. Sean, you do as well. We miss you, Sean Tubbs. Judah Wickower is our director. You may or may not recognize the star of this program. He's incognito, Neil.
Keith's not here.
Wearing a cape. He's got a belt and a mask on. You might need to stand up.
I've got my housing affordability utility belt.
We have a superhero fighting for housing affordability. What is your superhero name? Neil, we need to give him one.
He's a housing hero.
Housing hero. There you go.
God,
Housing hero.
So good.
I just trying to get dressed up in front of people.
We got the housing hero.
Housing hero. Yeah, I think this mask is coming off because I'm thinking of when Robin sits another thing about this whole I can't see anything. And even though I may or may not have spent a half an hour taping a mask to a pair of eyeglasses, I think this is going to come off pretty quickly. But hey, Neil, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure when we have you here. I start my Apple Watch timer to see how many zingers will come in per minute. So it's been a little bit light today. Usually you get.
What showed you started?
Normally it's in the pre-production meeting. I'm getting a couple of zingers, but for the half a dozen people in the world who do not know who you are and what you do, let us know what you guys do.
Sure. I'm Neil Williamson. Since 2003, I've served as the president and executive director of the Free Enterprise Forum. We're a privately funded public policy organization focused on local governments in Central Virginia. In doing that, I attend a large number of meetings, mainly in Charlottesville and Albemarle, but also in Greene, a little bit in Fluvanna, and from time to time in Nelson. We also have a stringer, Brent Wilson, who covers Greene County for us. Which Greene has a number of interesting things going on right now, as it is in the, I guess they used to call it the exurbs, but I'm running into more and more people, when we talk about housing affordability, I'm running into more and more people that are working in the community in professional jobs that are living in Buckingham. And that just speaks to some of the housing affordability or the product that they can't find in the locality where their employment is.
Well, thank you for being part of the kickoff series here. Yes, last Friday we had Jesse Rutherford, and Jesse shared with us, who's the chair of Nelson County Board of Supervisors, shared the same stat with us, that their folks that are working at their school systems don't live in Nelson County. They're in Buckingham, or I think it's Amelia County, which is a little south of Nelson County, which, I found that as odd, right? And now we're hearing the same thing in Greene County on that end of it. But let's pivot a little bit, because you're in the wine business, right? Kind of connected in a certain way. Talk a little bit about the sale that came up.
Sure.
It's a pretty big news, and Jerry talked about it yesterday on his show, and you wrote about it this morning, and I was busy trying to figure out how to tape a mask to a pair of glasses this morning.
I just wonder when you're able to do real estate based on their capabilities.
He is a realtor. He's a realtor. He's a realtor.
There you go. It was a couple minutes.
By means of background,
minutes.
I do all the wine writing for the Virginia Wine of the Month Club, and I've been associated with the Virginia wine industry since about the year 2000. At one point, I was the general manager for Prince Michel Vineyards and their Napa partner, their Napa sister company, Leduc Vineyards. And I've continued to be involved with the Well Hung Vineyard with an operation in Gordonsville, Roanoke, as well as in Charleston, South Carolina. The purchase that Keith so wonderfully referenced was the acquisition of Jefferson Vineyards and, more importantly, the associated acreage, some of which was already under conservation easement. But it was acquired by the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, which owns the presidential estate Monticello. Some folks, not many local folks, but some folks seem to believe that's a national park. It's not. It's privately owned by a 501c3 organization, the Thomas Jefferson Foundation. The foundation and the Free Enterprise Forum have had differing views over the years regarding property rights. The foundation believes that it is critically important that they have the view as Thomas Jefferson would have seen it from his Monticello to Charlottesville. The Free Enterprise Forum says that'd be great, buy it, because you really shouldn't be trampling on other people's property rights. And so that conflict has been 20 years going. And the foundation actually provided really aggressive language to begin with in the 2015 Albemarle County Comprehensive Plan that was suggesting that there be a checkoff box every time there was a land use decision that was within the Monticello viewshed that Monticello had been consulted. We find that to make them a super citizen. What other private property owner has that right?
There's none.
There's none, and there should be none.
Right.
There is still some of those vestiges of the language still exist in the 2015 plan. We are now in the midst of AC 44. This is the comprehensive plan program for Albemarle County. There is phase 2 kicks off Monday. I have been selected, I think they took everybody, which is why I think I was selected, to be a part of the phase 2 program and to be one of the stakeholders and to share my experience with my cohort of folks through the blog and through other meetings and these types of media appearances. I'm hopeful that as one of their big ideas for this comp plan, they're talking about equity. Well, if one private property owner has a zoning designation that no other private property owner has, is that equitable? It's funny, I'm cheering the purchase of Jefferson Vineyards and the assorted acreage. I also cheered when Monticello bought Mount Alto, which used to be known as Browns Mountain. And I understand some law students over the years had some really good parties up on Browns Mountain. Not that I'd ever been there to do that. There's no photographic evidence either.
And if there was, it was photoshopped.
Yes, Mount Alto was acquired in 2004. And at the time, Dan Jordan, who was the who was the president of the foundation, said, it's a very expensive approach to viewshed protection. But we're not in the real estate business, but we had to save our viewshed to protect a community landmark. And they spent the money.
It sounds like they're in the real estate business.
Well, they are in the real estate
Well,
business.
They seem to buy. They own that whole section of the county. So what is? I didn't get a chance to read your blog, so I apologize. So what is their intent with it? Are they going to run it as a vineyard or?
The winery, in all media accounts that I've reviewed, has deferred to the foundation. The foundation has said they do not have any current plans to change anything. The staff will remain. The winery will remain. That's the current plans. But they own it now. They can do whatever they want with it. That's the idea. Is if you want to protect the viewshed, buy it.
Yeah.
So they own.
Well, doesn't this seem like common sense? I'm not supposed to use that word anymore, that phrase, but it seems like it's common sense here.
Well, as the recovering developer and the housing hero, what's the developer 101?
Well,
developer 101 is to control everything that you can around you, and that's what they're doing. They're controlling all the land around them.
They are, and it has. If that's what you want to do, and that's core to your mission, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And you need to have a willing property owner to sell to you. And the Woodwards, who are good people, I know Attila well, and they sold them. Mm-hmm. And some of this land, as I say, is already, quote, protected under conservation easements, but the reality is nothing now will happen on that land without the express consent of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation.
So, for those who may not know what a conservation easement is, that's listening or watching the show, this is an easement that you can put onto your personal property that generally has some substantial tax incentives attached to it. But in essence, it means what the word means is that there will be no future development within that conservation easement. Is that a fair assessment of it?
Generally, yes. It's important to recognize every conservation easement is different and has different things that are and are not allowed. That being said, conservation easements are also forever. So when you put down a conservation easement, it's not just you who you're impacting your heirs. Anybody who buys that land, that conservation easement goes with the land.
My mentor, Bill Nitchman, has significant acreage in Keswick area under conservation easement, and he chose to do this. He chose to do this because he wanted to preserve what he thought was the integrity of the land moving forward, and it was important to him, even though he had a son. And he made this move after conferring with his wife and his boy, and they said, let's go ahead and do this. So I respect people that do this. And to Neil's point, he says this often, property owners have property rights. So if they choose to do this, it's their right to do so.
Absolutely. There are some, I'm a big believer in voluntary conservation easements, if that works for the property owner. That being said, we have concerns, and in fact, most easement holders won't accept an easement in a designated development area. It's kind of like putting a state park in the middle of where you're supposed to grow. It goes against common sense. But
Biscuit run. Biscuit run.
But the idea behind the conservation easements, there are some critics that say it's a hand from the grave.
Explain that.
The idea is that if this lives on far past you and your heirs, it is forever.
It's attached to the property and it goes with the property. As you sell the property.
So are you basically alluding it could impact housing affordability? Is that what you're alluding to?
I'm suggesting that I've asked the question, how much is enough? How much is enough?
Well, perpetuity's forever.
Right, but how much acreage is enough?
Yeah, that's the question.
So Albemarle County put forth a pretty hefty goal in the 2000s for amount of land in conservation easement. They also got they got a number of new conservation easements in what was the revalidation of the land use program. That meant if you were in conservation easement, you automatically got land use. That's a lower taxation. The other option that exists that many don't know about is ag forestal districts. And my way of thinking, that's a 10-year commitment to preserve large swaths of land that are adjacent to each other. As our friend Lonnie Murray says, it protects habitats for bears and things to run. And it's not forever. It's a 10-year commitment, and it renews, and you can opt out at the 10 years. So I tend to think that is more approachable for many people than for perpetuity. But that's the difference between the conservation easement and the ag forestal districts.
I have several clients I work with that do conservation easements, and it's typically huge tax incentives. It's generally the reason from the property owner's perspective to go ahead and do that. I will tell you, I'm working with a couple right now that they kind of say, I regret I did it, right? Because now they want to Jerry's point, there's been some family changes, and they want to kind of subdivide this up for just a family subdivision, and they can't. They can't do that. So this is, something that you should go into with very wide eyes open and counsel from
a trusted advisor.
Trusted advisors on that end of it. But while you're on Albemarle County, I kind of want to revisit this meeting you and I sat in that was, the agenda was the developer incentives, which didn't quite turn out to be the case. So are we ever going to see developer incentives from Albemarle County? And if so, do you can have the cape and the mask if you want. Do you have any idea what they're really going to end up being?
I think we better reset the stage for folks to know where we are on this whole process.
Sure.
So Albemarle County approved 2 years ago, approved something called Housing Albemarle. This would include mandating new developments proffer, it's a voluntary proffer, 20% of their new units to be affordable at a certain level. And that measure was enacted and then put on hold until they developed the developer incentives that would make the math work to allow that to happen.
So
right?
this is the 20%, right? The development should have 20% affordable housing or new developments on that. It's currently 15.
That's correct.
Right? The 20 hasn't been enacted yet because the developer incentives are not kicked in yet.
Right. It hasn't been enacted, but boy, do they seem to be getting more and more folks coming in with 20 and greater because they say it's not enacted yet, wink, wink, but we could enact it anytime we want. And this is what we want. And boy, we'd look more favorably on your application if you had more affordable housing. They won't say that verbatim because it would be a quid pro quo and likely be illegal. But it is, because it wouldn't be a voluntary proffer then. It's a mandate. But where that is the development community, I was in a number of meetings early on in the discussions, and we provided a litany, a menu of ideas of things that could be done. And we had 2 good meetings and then crickets. Literally, I probably said too much, so I didn't get called back. But the other change that occurred with about the same time as Housing Albemarle was enacted, the Affordable Housing Department, the Housing Department, moved from community development into social services. Now, that may seem very bureaucratic, but it is a change and you're working now cross-departmentally with housing, and it creates an interesting dynamic. So the question you asked is, will we ever see it? According to the meeting that we attended, we will.
Well, there was some frustration at the dais about that.
It was fascinating, and I credit you and Ned for the meetings that you've been in with the Regional Housing Partnership, because there is such a good understanding of the reality of building affordable housing.
Right.
He said from the dais something along the lines of, if you don't think we're going to have to pay for this, you're mistaken.
You're mistaken.
So they need skin in the game. Look at stuff that has worked. The View out in Crozet, I believe that's the name of that parcel.
That's right.
There was a tax abatement. What does that mean? Well, for 15 years, they'll pay full boat on the taxes with the improvements, and then they get rebated the portion of taxation that is greater than what it was before the development. And that then in year 15 starts to go down by 20% a year until year 20, it's full boat taxation.
So these tools are being used in other jurisdictions. Fluvanna County, Colonial Circle, there's literally foundations in the ground for 125 1 to 3 bedroom apartments that will serve 60% AMI and below on that received a tax incentive. This is what I'm calling it, a tax incentive from Fluvanna County. So there are, regional projects that are coming out. I guess the question I'm trying to wrestle with is, are we really ever going to see the incentives that's going to move the needle in the right direction? And I hate to be a pessimist about it. It just feels like we're never going to get there.
Never's a long time, Keith.
Sure. And I'm close, at my age, I'm closer to never than I was.
Especially when Yona's out of town.
That's number, I'm keeping count. Was that two? Was that two?
The bottom line on...
Should I bring my clippers over here or something?
No. The bottom line on the tax abatement piece is how you can understand it works. The locality takes 15 years of providing services to that community without receiving full tax benefit. The community, the developer who owns the parcel or their subsidiary or whatever subsequent owner, pays the lower amount, but all that time they're paying down the principal on their note, for lack of a better term. And so they just refinance in year 16 or 17, and now they have the funds available to support and keep the housing affordable. Now, this is just one. I think there's not a silver bullet, it's silver buckshot.
Shout out to my dear friend Robert Liberty. Liberty.
Gosh,
give me liberty or give me death.
I may have plagiarized the hell out of that.
But the idea that itself won't give you housing affordability. So most of the folks that I watch, and you saw this with the RST project up at Forest Lakes as well, they're using what's called LIHTC, which is low income tax credits.
That's right.
And leveraging state funds as well. So it's 2, 3, 4 deals, all of which that require housing affordability for a longer term than the 20 years of the tax abatement.
So this project in Colonial Circle has LIHTC, has the local tax incentive in front of it. It required all those pieces of the puzzle in order to produce 125, 60% in AMI and below rental units. I'm generally a positive guy, right? But
It's hard to be on this one.
The bottom line is localities that want affordable housing across the spectrum must invest in affordable housing.
So on my ride in this morning, I had 4 real estate agents call me from 4 different firms, from 4 different jurisdictions, asking me, because apparently I wear a cape, asking me, hey, I need to find a first-time home buyer. Where is something coming up? Where should I be looking? They were reaching out to me because the buyer pool is so deep. They're trying to desperately find something. And, I actually came in a little down today because I don't know what to tell them, it's that we're going to hopefully talk about the city rezoning here in a little while. But, other than going, and we're going to on Monday talk with Woody Fincham and talk about the market on the other side of the mountain, it's a difficult conversation to have with folks.
Kevin Yancey's watching on the other side of the mountain, and he says in Waynesboro, assessments have jumped anywhere from 30 to nearly 40% year over year. Kevin Yancey, I sent you a direct message. Make sure you pay off that bet and give Scott Morris that bottle of bourbon. It's been 41 days. You need to pay that bet. He's saying the assessments are out of control in Waynesboro.
And we're going to talk about that on Monday, right? I kind of want to focus on Albemarle and Charlottesville a little bit today. But I'm going to give you, whichever color you would like, one of the magic wands. So in your magic wand, what is the top 3 or 4 incentives that Albemarle County should be doing that they're not, in your opinion?
It's a great question.
I believe that a well-structured tax abatement program is one that can be done and has been done. Secondarily, direct investment. Habitat for Humanity's project right now has $1 million roughly of county direct investment through a performance agreement, and they're meeting those goals and exceeding those goals, and that is another one that $1 million in a project makes a difference.
I can jump in on that. $625,000 Albemarle County gave the Land Trust, and we produced 23 homes with a partnership with Stanley Martin Homes, which are valued roughly $8 million. So you're 100% right. Direct investment matters. I interrupted you.
That's all right. The reality also is that we need to examine where you think the market takes care of things and where the government must step in. There is a safety net. There needs to be a safety net for shelter. Not everyone should be a homeowner. Sorry to my realtor friends, not everyone should be a homeowner.
Ray Cadell says that all the time. Home ownership is not for everybody.
It is a, so the question is, we often try and break these into cohorts. So what cohort are you trying to serve? I believe there is a cohort from 0 to 60, 65 that need government subsidy and support.
So we're talking about AMI.
AMI, I'm sorry, for annual median income. So that is a locality-based number. That being said, then you get that 65 to 80% AMI. That is probably your rental market, subsidized by Section 8 housing, subsidized by creating a product that is owned entirely by the entity, so that it's there's no purchase opportunity there. It's a designed rental facility. And then you have the market. The market really can barely handle right now, under current interest rates, 80 to 100%.
Yeah,
the interest rates make a difference, and that's the part that gets lost often, is what does it take? Because
I can add more context to that. So from the Land Trust, the 23 units that we sold was the average AMI was 65%, but you can't go over 215 in the purchase price, to your point. So as you start going up in the purchase price, your area median income starts growing and growing and growing, and that end of it. But you're 100% right. It can be done, but it also requires, a little bit of change in this red tape, man.
It does, but here you asked what the county can do. Here's a crazy idea that the county and the state could do tomorrow. How about planning affordable housing and a mix of housing around the infamous Biscuit Run State Park? I had the pleasure of going to Greenville with the chamber last year, and we saw an area that was reclaimed into a park by the city of Greenville, and it was mainly in floodplain, but surrounding the floodplain was slightly elevated, and they've carved off that circle to be affordable housing. And what are they doing to make that affordable housing happen? They're giving the land. You take the land out of the equation, whether it be a community land trust,
you have affordability.
You have affordability. If you take the land out of the equation, and in exchange for the land you get a portion of the deed, you then can keep it affordable.
I'm going to timestamp what he just said. Evidently, there's someone who's very curious about running for Board of Supervisors that would like an action plan for Biscuit Run Park, and that might be the action plan right there. Why is that not done?
It's not done, but it's controlled by the state. Remember, the state gave a 99-year lease to Albemarle County. But if you look at what it takes to build affordable housing, you need to have materials, you need to have labor, and you need to have land.
And infrastructure.
The idea behind it for the county would be to get into that business, whether it's being the holder of the land trust, transferring some county-owned land that isn't going to be used for a school to the land trust, if they did that transfer, and maybe they subdivided it ahead of time, because sometimes projects that are buy the locality, get through the red tape faster. Those are the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that we need. And why
love this
can't we
guy.
do it?
I love this guy.
So one of the things
love this guy.
I'm pushing hard and getting a little resistant is to create a land bank, which is in essence what you're talking about, and where the 6 jurisdictions all get together under a certain umbrella. I happen to think the Regional Housing Partnership is the right umbrella to do that. Some may think otherwise. But what you do is you create this regional land bank, which does exactly the same thing, where you would take a school or a portion of some county-owned property that you can turn around and do similar to what UVA is doing, right? You send out an RFP, right? You partner up with some developers and
I will say that it's critical to talk about what UVA is doing. It has. I will be moderating a panel at the State of the Community event next week, next Friday. I encourage folks to go to the State of the Community event. I think it's 11:30 on Friday at the Darden School. It's a ticketed event. There'll be lunch at the end. I'll be the one that stands between you and your lunch. But I have had the opportunity to speak with Pace Lockney from UVA a number of times preparing for this panel. And, you know, she has been associated with the university for 20 years or so. And I was just saying, you know, I've been doing this for about 20 years. This is a huge change in thinking by the university. They're delivering units. Now, people say it's not enough units, it's not fast enough. Then there's those of us in the desert just looking for a glass of water that are saying, my God, thank you for bringing a glass of water. So they're going to deliver, it's 1,500 units.
Charlottesville Twitter is certainly saying it's not fast enough. You've seen those tweets. Yeah. You're saying you're not necessarily buying that.
I'm saying something is better than nothing. Sooner would be better, but something is better than nothing.
I agree.
So one of the other masks and hats that I wear, as you well know, I'm on the community engagement team for that project. So, you know, they are focusing on the 2 rental units for the most part at the moment, and they're in the RFP process, request for proposal process. You know, I'd like to see it to go a little faster on that end of it, but they are moving in the right direction. The next big thing for the ownership will be the North Fork parcel, which will have probably a larger number of units, which will have some ownership component in it. But at the moment, it looks like there's...
And it's important to recognize North Fork is owned by the foundation.
It is, well, all 3 parcels are owned by the foundation. That's just a recent move. They took the one that's across from, help me out, what's the hotel on West Main Street?
The old Sears building.
The old Sears building, thank you, on West Main Street. They've actually handed the UVA handed that over to the foundation, which is an important piece of information because it has to go through their zoning process, which we're going through this whole RFP process, and now we got to go through a whole rezoning site plan process through the city and/or Albemarle County. But the point that you made is it took me about 10 years to get UVA at the table as part of the Planning District Commission and Regional Housing Partnership. And the fact that they're at the table is a huge step forward.
Agreed. And I'm happy to report that the president will be speaking at the State of the Community event along with Pace Lockney on my panel. And this event will be, there's still 100 or so tickets left. And you can go to sevillechamber.com to get your tickets.
Well, I'm going to pick one up, but I'll be sitting in this seat till around 11:30, but I'll show up late and watch you guys chat.
Comments coming in fast and furious. Let's go to the I Love Seville group. And on the I Love Seville group, multiple people are asking for some insight on the Southwood project and if it's truly housing affordability. Do you want to touch on that, Neil?
Sure. The Southwood project is moving. You talk about something that took a long time to get to where they got to. It took a long time to get that moving. But I can't recall who it was, but there was one, I believe it was a planning commissioner in Charlottesville that said, yeah, I mean, I literally can watch Southwood going up and there's a new house almost every day. Is it really housing affordability? Well, I would encourage you to take a look at the performance agreement that Habitat for Humanity has with Albemarle County. They have met each of those goals. To receive the funds, they have to report in on a regular basis on what their milestones that they've hit. It's not all affordable housing.
That's what I was just.
It is a project that is supported, that includes affordable housing, but is supported by commercial development and market development. This is how it works.
It's mixed use, mixed income.
It is, but also it is, at its core, it is anti-displacement. Anyone who is living in the Southwood Trailer Park has the opportunity, but not the requirement, to move to one of the new units. This has been a resident-driven process. It is Dan Rosenzweig, who I think has been on the program a couple of times.
Front of the show.
He is a much nicer person than I am, and is a wealth of information about resident-driven planning.
And that's a great thing to point out. It is mixed use. It is mixed income. The residents that have the opportunity to go ahead and do that, if that they're taking advantage of, they're able to take advantage of that, is a different conversation to have. But they're doing it, and it's very similar to a project that's happening a little bit in the center of town, right? Where it was the same thing. It was no displacement. Friendship Court, right? And so they're building the apartments.
That question has come in on Friendship Court, Garrett Square. Former mayors calling out Sunshine Mathon on how this project is being handled. She did a Facebook post yesterday about this, a log one.
And it's really, and I walk past it a couple of times a day because it's by my office, and they're really doing a great job, but that's the intent. They're going to build one set of buildings, and the folks who wish to move into that will move into that, and they'll start working their way around the project, and then go ahead and demolish the existing things. But it was very community-driven, and it took quite a while to get there.
Well, it's interesting. I've heard anecdotally of some challenges they've had with the red tape. I believe you saw some of that with your Nassau Street project.
I've still seen it, actually. Believe it or not, we are 2.5 years past closing, and we still haven't gotten our bond money back. Not that I'm complaining. We've got people's in it, but
it is when you talk about what makes projects cost money.
There it is.
There it is. And I believe that there have been significant cost overruns on the Friendship Courts projects that have been driven by the red tape.
Yeah, so somebody can Google, they can look on its national stats, 25% of every new construction home, regardless if it's an apartment or otherwise, or single-family detached, is red tape.
But there,
Or
and
expense.
the question is, what's the proper balance?
Yeah.
Because what does the zoning regulation do? It not only protects the homeowner, it protects the subsequent buyer. And there are certain things that you want to make certain are correct. For instance, you probably want to have it be structurally sound. I mean, that seems reasonable, and somebody should be checking that. You don't just take the word as caveat emptor. So that's why we have inspections. So the question becomes one of how it's applied and how deeply does it go, and what's reasonable and rational. Is 25% too much? Probably. But what are you getting for that? What protection are you getting? And is the juice worth the squeeze?
So stuff's coming in fast on this.
Go ahead.
So there's got to be some kind of disconnect happening. And Katie, I'm going to get to your comment. KTP, the Queen of Whitehall, Katie Pearl, watching the show. I have 4 different people asking about affordability in Southwood right now. Why is the disconnect? Is it the messaging? Is it the branding? Is it the communication? Like this question from Katie, and she's a realtor, and she's very talented. She says, I'm curious if the residents of Southwood are able to afford to live in the new development, or is this through Habitat? Then on another page, ultimately it seems the goal is profit and not the replacement of affordable housing at Southwood. And then on another page altogether, the residents of Southwood are losing their homes here and are being left without a place to live. I mean, the same comment in very different forms here. What's happening here?
So if you don't mind me jumping in, I think you started it off right. I think it's a lack of messaging and maybe not getting the story out correctly. I wrote a note down. We're going to have to get Dan in here and let Dan speak to it. Very specifically on what's happening. Every conversation I've ever had with Habitat is nobody's being displaced, only if they wish to be not to take possession of something. Now, Dan needs to say that, not Keith or Neil. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair, and I think that I think part of it is the perception, because there are going to be properties that come up that are going to be market rate. And those market rate units, there's another project, Lachlan Hills, that has Habitat.
You know that well.
Habitat,
I know it real well.
Habitat Homes, and there were folks that had a fear that the adjacent properties wouldn't be desirable because you were next to a Habitat home. The reverse has been true. There have been some people that really, really, really want to be in that neighborhood so that they have that mixed community.
Yeah, so Habitat has a section within that, and you're 100% right. Some people were afraid, some people weren't on that end of it. But my sister lives there.
That's what I'm saying. You know it well.
And I know it well, and it's been absolutely not the case. It works out really, really well. But so I made a note. We're going to get Dan in here. These are a couple of great questions. I don't want to answer it incorrectly, but everything that I understand is, if the folks that are living there wish to buy, they have the ability to go ahead and do that. How that mechanism works, I don't know exactly.
I also will say that the folks associated with the development have been somewhat masterful in bringing the residents to planning commission meetings, board of supervisors meetings, and bringing translators, because there are many that do not have English as a first language, so that folks can understand what's going on in front of them. I am encouraged by what Habitat is doing. It's one model. It's not the only model, but it is important to recognize Habitat is a developer here.
Yeah.
They are making a development work with the idea of non-displacement and with market rate units included, and they have to go through the same development process that everyone else does.
Friend of the program, John Blair, watching the show. NBC 29 is watching the show. Tom Healy, the realtor, watching the show. Joyce Washington, the realtor, watching the program. Ashley Butler is saying, Neil Williamson, fly, Eagles, fly. She's watching the show as we speak right now. I see the Seville watching the show here. Why are there parallels, Keith, with the messaging at Southwood and the messaging at Friendship Court? Because many in the community are seeing, say, Friendship Court, that the African-American community is being displaced there. And many in the community are saying the Hispanic community is getting displaced from Southwood. Is that a messaging issue? I mean, you literally have the former mayor ripping Sunshine right now on social media.
Yeah. So again, I'm not in the room. I'm not in the great details on that stuff. Everything I know from the periphery and meetings I've ever attended, that is not supposed to happen. Now, if it's happening, that's a whole different conversation. But Southwood in particular, I'm looking at it right now. This is a huge project. It's multiple phases.
It's massive.
I can't read fast enough to figure out what the number of units are in it, but there's different phases which will handle different parts of the community. We talk about missing middle all the time. This is an exact example of what missing middle is all about, right? It's missing middle is, in my opinion, much more than just product type. It's also income based and so forth and so on. So these are working on the missing middle. It's hard for us to get into this debate right now without either Sunshine at the table or Dan at the table. And I'm going to invite both of them so that we can have this conversation live, but I'm a little bit reluctant to go down that road without knowing the details.
And I encourage folks, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, I believe, is hosting a housing affordability home again event, and I want to say it's the end of March.
March 23rd.
March 23rd.
How many people go to those things?
Over 200.
Yeah.
not
Well,
bad.
we timed, the first one we did was in
It was a Good Friday in the 2020.
No, it was
21?
19, because it was
19.
just before the pandemic started. We had a couple hundred people. We've actually been doing, we meaning the Regional Housing Partnership during that, has actually been doing weekly or monthly Zoom meetings, and we're having 100 people, 75 people show up,
good.
which is a good
Yeah.
good amount. But look, I think at the end of the day, this is a messaging problem. This is not getting the story out there in a digestible form that folks can listen to. And then what happens is people start extrapolating things from that because there is a lack of that messaging. Whose responsibility that is, that's a different story. But yeah, I'm going to try to bring them in. I'm going to ask them. Hopefully they can sit down and let them try to tell their message so we can get some of this stuff cleared up.
Well, and part of the reason is as you get into these projects and they start coming out of the ground, there are a million things going on that are around you that you're dealing with. And you feel the need to explain some of them because they aren't core to the message, but they are critically important to a cohort in the community. So you're spending time talking about the environmental impacts of streamwater rather than the housing affordability that you're providing for current residents.
Again,
Love it.
the 3 phone calls, excuse me, 4 phone calls, that's this many. The 4 phone calls, sorry, 3, 4, it was close.
He's
The
going to
4
start
phone,
using his toes.
Yona's out of town.
Yona's out of town.
Yona's out of town.
Yeah.
We love you, Yona.
But Forrest has been keeping me straight, so that's good, the
That's
dog.
the dog.
The 4 phone calls I had on the way in, right? This is the same conversation that we're having. Hey, where can I go? Where can my client buy something? They're teachers, they're firemen, they're police officers.
Well, and what can be done? And what we're seeing right now in Charlottesville is a dramatic element of change.
Let's go there.
Oh, I thought you might like to.
Please.
I worked on that segue all day.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Charlottesville hired a consultant to build first an affordable housing plan, then to build that a comprehensive plan around the affordable housing plan, and that was approved in December of last year, of 2 years ago now. And now they're working on the zoning, which is law. Comp plan is guide, zoning is law. And there are some in the community that believe that will be approved by council prior to June 19, 2023.
You got the Clippers?
Hold on a second.
But
Continue to talk.
But
Studio
the
camera,
the idea behind the zoning is to make more housing available. It literally will allow anyone who has a single family unit to put up a duplex, triplex, or quadplex by right. You'll still have to meet certain building requirements, but you won't have to go through the legislative process and hear your neighbors complain about why you shouldn't do it. And once that passes on or before June 19th, 2023, Mr. Smith will be known as the clean-shaven Mr. Smith.
For those
Carry
that
this
are,
around. I am ready to.
it's a very quiet Clipper.
Well, when you spend with, my sister said this is what to buy.
For those that are not watching, if you're strictly listening, Keith Smith has Clippers.
Clippers.
He's prepared to lose the bet. Neil Williamson is going to win the bet. Keith is going to have his mustache shaven live on here.
Yeah, I am. Look, I want to lose this mustache, and that's saying a lot. I've had this on my face since 1985. That tells
It
you
also speaks to your character and how you're a good man. You're a good man.
Thank you. So
1985. Jerry, where were you in 1985?
I was how old I was? Almost 4. Almost 4 years old.
Oh, my mustache is almost as old as you. Oh, good Lord. But I
love you guys.
thank you. That was we keeping score. Is somebody
Yeah.
keeping score here?
That was a zinger for me.
Got it.
No one has sung him yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
So the zoning right now is, they've released Module 1, which was 170 pages, a large number of images saying what can and can't be done. I have read 150 pages of the document. I'm still working on the balance, and I will get that done over the weekend. The idea behind it is much more of a form-based code than, so far of what I've read, more form-based code to create a street, a relationship to the pedestrian, and to create a street activity. There are some things I have real questions about with regard to how it's written, but there are, I encourage folks to get engaged in this process. There will be 2 more modules, I believe, out-delivered. The first module was delivered on time, and I believe we will see it enacted by 19 June.
You know, and I will gladly lose this mustache with
And
absolute
to be clear,
excitement.
Neil Williamson made a bet over a bottle of bourbon. Someone else at the table upped the ante.
Judah.
Poor Judah, sitting there going. But you know, let's talk about my mustache and my bet a little bit. While we're on the city of Charlottesville, do you think the seating of a new city council members may have that 19th in jeopardy?
I think
Good question.
it's a very good question, but I think it's
And which of the 4 will help move that?
in
needle
politics. You have to count to 3 in Charlottesville. Do I believe
along? You don't think they're going to want to go for a full 5?
See, I think to Neil's point, there's already the political capital to count to 3
Yeah, I
with
agree.
the guys on dais.
Okay.
But to your point, I think they're going to want to have a full dais before doing this.
yes, they will want to have a full dais
Yeah.
for the vote, and
But we already have the political capital.
the political capital has been spent.
Well, yeah.
The comp plan doesn't become reality absent the zoning. The zoning may get some tweaks. I'll be very interested to see if all of it survives legal challenges. I fully anticipate you will see lawsuits.
Well, I know one.
But that'll be after I lose my mustache.
That will be while you're clean shaven.
But that's an important point to say, because the fact that it gets approved doesn't mean it's actually going to get implemented, right? 'Cause
Well,
it could get tied up.
If there's a stay, the reality is that if they enact it, it becomes law on whatever enactment
Sure.
date they set. And then a judge can put a stay on that order and not allow them to enforce it, or not, dependent upon the merits of the case and the arguments that are brought forth. There are parts of it that I still am trying to understand how they work under Virginia law. The idea of sublots, which are lots that aren't really lots. That seems kind of tenuous in legal construct. Reminding everyone for the 50th time, I am not a lawyer.
So I can tell you, out in Seattle, the land trust that I'm helping that they're doing, they just lease it. So it's not technically a sublot. So when I was sitting last night,
Right, and that's operating under Washington state law,
that is
not
correct.
Virginia state law.
That's absolutely
Those are
true.
different states, Keith.
But, really? Thank you. So there's 3, that's number 3, right? Or number 4? Was that
was
number
number
4?
four.
Zing?
That was number four.
Number 4,
Yeah.
Zing. Thank you. So to remind everybody, there are 4 modules. Module number 1, which is what we're looking right now, which I read last night at the bar. Zoning districts, rules of measurements, use tables, and zoning map. Number 2, which is what I'm most interested in seeing, is the actual development standards. So this will be landscaping, parking, signs, lighting. That I think is going to be a much more in-depth conversation from the practitioner's perspective of it. And then the last module is 3, is the actual administration and review process of it, which is to me also more interesting, because once you get it approved, once the city approves it, how are we going to get a project approved?
Well, then, and there are key elements that may or may not find their way after legal review to be a part of this ordinance. And that's what this is an ordinance. It's a long ordinance. But the parking is one that I've heard raised time and again.
Yeah.
How are you going to handle that in addition to the other infrastructure? Yeah. Where are all these people going to drive, or where are they going to be sending their kids to school? These are real good questions.
So to your point, module 1, and I read it last night. I actually buzzed through all the pictures because I'm kind of familiar with them, get to the text end of it. It's mostly the pretty pictures, right? This is a visual, very visual module where it shows this is what this will look like and this is what that look like. When we get to module number 2, that's the nuts and bolts of it, exactly how this is going to work.
Well, I want to credit the city for reaching out to Cadre, which is the Charlottesville Area Development Review, Roundtable, and they said, hey, here's module 1, break it. Tell us what doesn't work. You know, take some of your projects and run it through this, and what works, what doesn't work. Asking design professionals for their help is the way to get things done. Get buy-in from those regulated when drafting regulations. That's what they're not doing in Albemarle on the affordable housing, and that's what they are doing in the zoning for community development, or rather neighborhood development services in the city.
It's an extremely robust and thorough process. I have kudos to them. So for folks that want to go out and see, there's 3 Module 1 open houses coming up. February 22nd, at the Charlottesville High School,
cafeteria.
23rd at Buford Middle School, and the 25th at City Space, which I am actually going to attend. And then on the 28th, there's a Planning Commission work session. If you go into their website, you can actually sign up.
CvillePlansTogether.com. Is it .org or .com?
I'll check.
.com.
.com.
Looking at it, .com.
Yeah, and that's a very robust, all the documents, all the way through the process, CvillePlansTogether.com.
So here's my question.
I got one too. Go ahead.
I bet you it's the same one.
Yeah, I've probably.
Eagles by 5. That you go, Ashley.
You think, huh?
Oh, is this another bet?
No, stop it. You're getting me into way too much trouble. Really, Eagles by 5, huh? Why 5?
Because it's going to be a very close game.
Got it. So I'm
What's your question, Keith?
so
Try
I
to keep
lose
that track.
I
Yeah,
lose
I
squirrel. I lose my mustache. This gets adopted on the 19th or there before that. Let's assume they work out everything. Is this really going to move the needle, and if so, how much?
That was my question.
This will improve housing affordability in the city. How much? This is going to be an evolution, not a revolution. It will take time for folks to figure out how to utilize the code best. There will be missteps along the way. There will be spaces that get developed first, fast and furious. There will be years of pulling parcels together so that then the whole block, a whole city block, can be developed, and be developed in a higher density where it needs to be, close to services and close to employment.
So what he means by that is eventually a developer is going to buy a few houses next to each other and then combine the land and then build something more dense. That's what you're alluding to.
That's what I'm alluding to, and it may be 3 parcels, it may be 4 parcels, but it will be, it's the conversation I have about transit all the time. It's a barbell conversation. In order for transit to work, you have to have a lot of people in one place and a place where a lot of people want to go.
Right.
And then you can connect them. In the case of this density, you need to have density work. You need to have it in a place where people can live, work, and play, and be happy living there.
Would you think that the area around the university is going to get developed first? Because that's where the money is?
Yes and no. I think that some of those parcels are not, nothing happens absent a willing property owner. Some of the property owners, I don't believe, want their property to sell. That's their right. They have property rights. But there are, I think probably you'll see some things close to the university, close to the hospital is where, that's an employment center. And while the university is an employment center, it also is an academic center. So I think that the hospital area is probably more primed than the university standalone.
Grayson says, ask Neil, Jerry, about your take with the extra applicants and how UVA is going to utilize the increased density to raise enrollment at school. So basically what I've been saying is if UVA sees the additional density possibility coming online, then it understands that it could potentially enroll more students because it's got more houses for them that it doesn't have to own on grounds and manage on grounds. You buy that, yes or no?
UVA has not stated any intention of increasing the number of undergraduate or graduate students. That being said, they are increasing some of their schools, and one could say, well, perhaps
They're
in the
adding
future-
schools.
They're adding schools.
Yeah.
But the actual enrollment, I have been told by people within the university community, is not destined to change dramatically anytime soon.
I don't see us ever going over 30,000.
Wow.
And I may be wrong, but
I
that's
think
just,
you're wrong on that.
well, I'm not going to bet anything, but
Devil's advocate for you.
but the same conversations I'm having, it seems like that's
So if they create a data science school
yeah,
and they create a biotech institute,
yeah.
are they going to then decrease the undergraduate school enrollment because they're adding additional schools?
So I think to Neil's point, they're adding schools, and maybe that group of folks won't be counted into maybe a whole different.
That sounds like
pool.
a smoke and mirror game. That's a shell game right there.
It could be a little politics there.
Okay,
but-
so if you add additional schools and you keep the undergraduate enrollment the same, aren't you upping enrollment, right?
Yes, I am being told
Okay.
that enrollment is not being increased anytime in the near future.
I
The
want-
three of us are, I hate to use the phrase again, common sense guys. If 2 new schools come on grounds and enrollment stays the same undergraduate, aren't they going to have more UVA students?
I don't know the mechanics of UVA to say that all their schools are oversubscribed or that it's a zero-sum game.
But we do know the class of 2027 has the most applicants in the history of UVA history.
That could drive one more person to have to read applications. That doesn't mean they accept anymore.
That's fair. That's a fair comment. That's a fair response right there.
So I'm going to change gears on everybody. I emailed to Judah, if Judah has the time to do it, to drop into the feed the actual map, the zoning map, the proposed zoning map on it. And as I was reviewing all these documents, I decided to pick on the RA, which is, again, I didn't do a formal one, but looking at the map is darn near 3/4 of that of the map. So that was when I was focusing. Okay, what do they want to do with RA? Because when you start looking at some of the mixed node modules and the industrial or the special electric civic, the percentage of area is pretty small, right, on that end of it. And so I wanted to take a hard look at what the RA and the RB, which seems to me the two largest volume of areas, and what would that really impact us if 5% did it. I think this is a great thing. I think this is going to help density. It's going to help inventory. It's going to potentially help housing affordability. I just don't think we're ever going to hit the numbers to really move that needle in a great direction. I may be wrong. I may have to grow my mustache again, to take another bet to shave it off. But I mean, do you think we're going to add? We're at 50,000 people. We're going to add another 10,000, or I just don't know if we're really going to add that many to the process.
I think we will. I think we're going to add. I think the population is going to uptick.
Yeah,
I think the population will uptick because of the 2 schools. And what happens if we get the 300 to 500 million for the regional tech hub from the federal government?
I get all that. I don't disagree with. I think, and we talked about it the other day. I was sitting at Tavola Bar last night next to a guy that came in from Austin that just got hired over at Willow Tree.
There you go.
He's coming from Austin, moving into Willow Tree. Being who we are, we're talking to people at the bar, and I potentially got a buyer.
Did you give them your business card?
Oh, was I supposed to do that? Damn it!
Well, you're cool.
I got
the phone. With
that's what I did. He scanned it in.
I love that. I love
that. And we're talking. Then we went into another conversation about his brother's a real estate agent in Austin. Is not making any money. What can I do to help him? But that's what's happening. So my point is that are we going to increase enough density that will move the housing affordability needle? I pray and hope so. I just don't know if we're going to get to that mass of numbers.
What do you think, Neil?
Am I wrong?
Well, there was a regional needs assessment done back in 1999 that highlighted the number of affordable units that Charlottesville needed. And I don't remember, do you remember what that number was for Charlottesville?
Oh, God, in the thousands.
It was in the thousands.
Yeah.
So,
and again, so everybody knows here, I'm kind of playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, right?
and what we're saying is This will help. This
Oh,
is
there's no doubt about that.
This will help. And just like UVA's commitment to affordable housing, it will help. Will it solve the problem? No. As Barbara Bush used to say about the starfish that she threw back into the ocean, did it make a difference? Well, it did to that starfish.
That's right.
It's true.
So the conversations
Sure.
I'm having with a couple of Fluvanna County elected officials, and as you know, the Regional Housing Partnership, we do our roundtable, our roadshow as we're calling it, and we're going to have two next Friday. Moselle Booker and Chris Fairchild are going to join us. You know, one of the things we talk about when we do the roundtable is the regional interconnectivity of housing affordability, you know, and I think you're starting to see Louisa County is talking housing affordability, which is a great conversation to have. You're starting to see some of the outlying counties understand that what happens in Charlottesville impacts them, what doesn't happen in Charlottesville impacts them, what happens in Fluvanna impacts Charlottesville. So this is one of the reasons I'm so an advocate for this regional approach. That being said, your county, your home county is about ready to bring a bunch of units on.
Well, it will bring him on when the folks that have already completed the entitlement process choose to bring them on.
Sure.
That is property rights. The county has approved about 2,000 units, mainly located in the Ruckersville area, to come online. How quickly they'll come online? There was a project, I think it's before the board next week, maybe it was this week, that talked about bringing only 97 units a year on as a cycle. How quickly they come online is really a function of the market as well as the builders associated with it, how much they want to move forward with it, and how easy they can get the contractors to do the work. So it is a dynamic. I was in a meeting the other day with someone who was bemoaning the fact that someone got an approval to do something and then didn't do it. I said, well, that's the property owner's right. If you get the permission to do it, you don't have to do it. It is up to the property owner.
You can't mandate it has to be started in a
Right.
certain, yeah. But the point I guess I'm trying to make looking at all the jurisdictions around here, to say that in some sort of process, right, regardless if it's being produced or not, that Greene County seems to be kind of the standout here with potentially 2,000 units
I think
coming.
Greene County's in the catbird seat. I mean, the momentum and the tailwinds behind Greene County is tangible.
Well, there are concerns, as there are with any new development in any locality. So those
You're talking NIMBYs?
I'm talking realists, neighbors that say, okay, you're going to bring 2,000 units here. Where are those kids going to school? That's a very real question.
So
How are you planning for this? What is it you're going to do? And how does your capital improvement plan address the demands of the new units in Louisa? What are you doing to get them? Louisa schools are great. Are they properly located? How long does it take a kid from a gated community on the edge of Zion's Crossroads to get to an elementary school? Those are questions that the neighbors have.
So
It's fair questions.
This is the beginning of these Friday roundtables. So I have two Greene County Board of Supervisors coming in later in the month. I'm working on a couple from Louisa County, so we can actually have these conversations similar to the Sunshine and Dan conversation. You know, to have the actual folks at the table to have this conversation. But as you guys have been talking, just for the heck of it, I've been trying to take a look at what is active under $250,000 right now.
In the car footprint?
And the car footprint detached for a start over it. There's 20.
And again,
How many in Almora?
Hold on one second.
how many
I'll tell you.
people start their housing climb in a detached home with a white picket fence?
I
No,
see.
well, we're going to go to attached next.
And how many people start their climb with a rope ladder hanging to the attic?
That's my roommate.
There's
He's totally
there's
right.
Three.
He's totally right.
There's 3 in Albemarle County.
It's totally right.
Under-
I started with a condo. You know, maybe the mindset just needs to change. And there's condo inventory out there. And I understand that everybody wants the backyard and the white picket fence, but hey, mean, I lived in a condo for 7 years.
Anybody want to take a stab at attached under 250 in the 6 jurisdictions? How many?
Attached under 250?
So these are either
Condos or townhomes?
no condos. I'm going to do separately.
Okay.
So these are either duplexes or townhomes.
Attached under 250, wow.
Under 250.
I would bet there's not many.
One.
Is that true?
Right.
Where's it at?
Sycamore Square. That's out in
Okay.
Fluvanna County.
That's a good spot. How about condos?
I'm going to do condos here in a second.
The other thing to look at, and I'm not a realtor nor a lawyer, but it is important to recognize how important it is to have a trusted expert and a trusted advisor in understanding the locality that you're looking at on the results. Now, we're talking regionally here, but as one who grew up in a not so distant locality, you see how many attached 250 products do you see like in Williamsburg? You don't.
Right.
You don't.
6.
Brittany Gray says this for
Yeah.
the panel, and it's a good point, Brittany. She says condos are often not warranted, and people just starting out cannot afford 20% down payments. She put a good point on there. When I bought the villas, I did put 20% down, and a lot of people cannot do that.
A lot of people cannot do that, and sometimes if it's totally unwarranted, even 20% won't work.
Right.
On that end of
Great
this.
point, though.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brittany.
There are 6 condos available in that footprint. Villas at Southern Ridge,
That's what I'm
Hessian
talking
Hills, Eagles Landing, and the other 2 are in what we talked about last Friday, in Wintergreen. So I will take a quick look at them with somebody on the chat just to see, because generally they'll note in there, are they warrantable or non-warrantable?
Juan Sarmiento says we need a new high school in Louisa County. The county's completely booming. Multiple people are saying this is not housing affordability in any means. We empathize with you guys completely. Spencer is saying that the increased density that's coming to this area is going to be scooped up by these new schools, which is what I think. Spencer also says until Albemarle County expands its developmental area outside the 5%, the added land in Charlottesville City is just going to be more coveted, which is going to drive the price. I think it's a decent point right there by Spencer. Katie Pearl says it's extremely hard to buy condos. Most of the affordable condos are not warrantable, which makes it
right.
impossible for lower income purchasers to buy. So multiple realtors are putting on the feed the warrantable issue. And it's 100% true.
Yeah.
When I got the villas, I had to put 20% down or I could not buy the villas.
So so just to put a bow around the warrantable and non-warrantable, the simple formula is if the condo association is less than 50% owner occupied, it's technically considered unwarrantable. That's where you get at that end of it. And the rationale behind that at the federal level is the businesses, for lack of a better term, that owns the units could control the association or the condo
And
association.
that is happening at the villas. Bart Fry, the developer from Virginia Beach, has control of the association.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys are 100% right. I love the viewers and listeners. You're not going to slide one by them.
And I appreciate Spencer, not me, that brought up the government restrictions on development areas have a direct impact on housing affordability because of the constriction of supply.
Right. Right.
Are they ever going to grow that? you think?
John's also made that point on the show, so is Anonymous, that if an Albemarle County continues to limit the area of development, then this development area that comes online in Charlottesville City is going to be coveted by the people that otherwise would be developing in Albemarle. That's a fair point.
And go back to our conversation about the development incentives, right? That's going to drive that conversation. The thing that I want to take a look at and been reading these hundreds of pages on it, is there any incentives, which there are, affordability incentives for the city rezoning rewrite that they're doing now? Is it obligatory? Is it not obligatory? That's a whole different conversation to have, but there are some bonus densities that I was reading yesterday in the city for if you have a certain percentage of affordability to it at a certain percentage AMI. But there's a lot of work between now and I lose my mustache that has to go through that. But folks should try to attend these meetings if they can. Or even better,
File Free Enterprise Forum.
support my dear friend that's sitting to my right.
Or even better, donate.
That's what I was
Yeah.
about ready to
Yeah.
go to. Donate so he can continue to do that and show up in these meetings and do these wonderful selfies that you do.
I'm happy to have the support of the community, doing
You're
the work
really good
that
at
I
your
do.
job, man.
I enjoy what I do. I do go to a lot of boring meetings, and I do live tweet many of them.
I love it.
So just a little
I genuinely learn from your live tweets.
and a little shout out to you, and you, maybe I'll embarrass you a little bit, but I don't think there's a single elected official that you talk in front of. They may not agree with you, but they respect you,
Oh, no doubt.
and that's huge, right? So there may not be agreement, but there's civility in the conversation. And they take what you say seriously, and I know you well enough to say this: you take what they say seriously on that end of it, and that's okay. You're just not sitting there yelling at people. You're actually trying to engage in a conversation and change. So my hat, or soon-to-be mustache, is off to you on that end of it.
I concur. The mayor of McIntyre, Bill McChesney, if Neil loses the bet, does he have to grow a mustache?
That's a great idea, Bill. I had a full COVID mustache and beard, and my wife made it certain that needed to
I
go
think that's
away.
where the bourbon comes in.
Yeah.
I'll get a bottle of bourbon.
He
out
gets a
it,
bottle of bourbon.
But look,
Speaking of bourbon, Kevin Yancey, make sure you give it to
Day
Scott
41.
Morris.
I'm not prepared to shave it off yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm losing this bet.
This bet was a year ago we made the bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering if the new sitting of a city council might screw that dates up a little bit. but
Multiple people are
you're
asking
100%
who
right.
Neil Williamson would like to see in that seat. If I know Neil, he's not going to answer that one directly.
I will say that Charlottesville is blessed to have a number of highly qualified applicants to choose from.
I'll ask Keith Smith this. I've been a huge proponent of Kathy Galvin for that seat. Do you want to answer that one or take that? It seems to me it's between Zakos and Galvin because of their institutional memory being on council, with Galvin being the most recent, and then Galvin gets the benefit of being an architect.
So, at the sake of losing my mustache faster, Kathy Galvin being an architect and understanding
Right.
land use,
Seems like a no-brainer.
to me would make sense in that.
And she's indicated that she doesn't want to run for re-election.
Yeah.
So whether we admit this or not, I'll say this. Snook, who's running for re-election, would not be handpicking his competition.
Yeah, so let's, if we've got time,
We got time.
Let's talk about that, right? Because I was watching a couple of tweets this morning. People are confused about the process, right? This decision will be made behind closed doors. This is not
February 20th.
it's not an open, transparent process, right? So do you want to tackle the process a little bit?
Well, the process, which I think it's been 55 years since Charlottesville had to do it,
This has not happened in 55 years.
I believe that's accurate.
Quite a while,
but it
anyway.
has happened regionally. We've had
Yeah,
it. We've had
elsewhere.
it happen elsewhere.
Yeah.
My county, it happened.
It did. And the idea behind it is the current council will seat someone to serve the unfinished term of Sena McGill. That will be decided by 4 people. I believe they have those 4 people each have different things they want to get out of that person. And I think that will be an interesting behind-the-scenes discussion. But on the 20th, you'll have a new city councilor.
Yeah.
And then you'll be headed toward a June 6th Democratic primary if there are more than 3 folks choosing to run for city council. And that will be the general election in Charlottesville.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would be.
Do we think Payne's going to run again? I
I'm
say
not going to
yes.
say
I
yes.
say yes.
I'm not going to say yes or no, but I would be surprised if he doesn't run.
Right.
Which is
I
kind
mean,
of a yes.
We have tremendous respect for Michael Payne here.
He's coming on the show.
This
so
is his
we can ask
primary
him.
source of income.
He's coming on the show, so we can ask him. I know
Yeah.
the next couple of months, I've got all these shows stacked up. Look, back on. I would be very surprised if Kathy doesn't get the nod
That's what I feel.
because of her expertise.
And institutional memory, and most recent on council.
The other thing to know is the 2 things that the council is going to be doing in the next 10 months are the budget
Yep.
and the zoning ordinance. And I'm certain that that will influence the 4 people making the decision on who of the 6 that have been winnowed down will be serving as your city councilor for March through December.
I agree. How about this question that's come in from Grayson? He lives in North Downtown. Gentlemen, if Kathy is in fact picked for that final spot, is it fair that she gets to select a city manager permanent?
Is it fair?
Or should that, let me add to his statement, should the city manager, the permanent city manager, be hired next year when you have elected people on the dais as opposed to an appointed person on the dais?
There's an election in the state of Virginia every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
So, that process is always happening. We may, in Charlottesville, be on 2-year breaks or something like that, but there's always election. Once they get sworn in, they're sworn in to do the job.
And I do not think that whoever is appointed is any less a city councilor selected by the public because it was selected by representatives that were selected by the public.
So I've got a placeholder for after the 20th because whoever's selected, we're going to ask them to join us and talk a little bit, which, Kathy's been on the show, your show, many a times, on my show a couple of times, so we shall see. But I think the third point you made is correct, Jerry, that, if she really decides not to run again.
She said she will not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that she may change her mind.
She can
It
change her
happens.
mind.
It
Yeah,
happens.
she can change her
happens.
mind.
It happens. But I think those 3 things stacking up, this is her world. She understands land use. She's most recent, and she's not going to run again. It's probably making a sure bet on her coming in.
So what do you think?
I think I said Kathy.
Yeah, I think Kathy. You want to touch that?
I believe
I
there
understand you
are
can't.
6 qualified applicants.
That's fair.
He
That's fair.
never takes a position.
No, I understand. That's completely fair.
But it's on paper it makes sense. So
Right.
We'll see.
Follow-up questions are coming on the feed. Have any of you guys heard of additional people running for city council? I have not.
No.
Only the rumors, and rumors aren't worth much.
Yeah. I can say this. Bellamy, who I thought could run for council, is running for delegate, so we know he's out of that, as is Dave Norris. So you've taken 2 off the table that could have run for council that are now running for delegate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think time will tell. When's the
June 6th.
June 6th? Yeah, so
Early voting starts May 5th.
yeah,
Love it.
so somewhere in the next 30 to 60 days, probably closer to 30 days, somebody's going to have to start throwing a hat in because they're just not going to have enough time to put a decent campaign. Would you agree with that?
It depends how many. If only 3 people come in, there's no need for a campaign.
Got it.
There you go. I mean, I would hope, and I steal the phrase from you, what is it? Candidates matter, elections matter, contested elections matter. I hope we have a contested election. I hope it's not just a gateway to 3 people winning. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the record to say that more than once. Non-contested elections were just an appointment.
Right.
Right. It's just there
And the
should-
election will be at the Democratic primary level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the election will be a Democratic primary level. Guys, we're not going to get to all these comments here. Neil, you are a popular dude.
Well, Neil has the pleasure of me bugging him regularly to come on. So hopefully he will continue, and we'll bring in, and we'll as this processes go on, we'll get some of that in depth, and then eventually you're going to sit here and watch me shave a mustache off.
We should say this. How can we support the Free Enterprise Forum?
Go to our website, which is freeenterpriseforum.wordpress.com, is the fastest way to get there. And you can click on the donate button, and you can donate online. Trust me when I say every little bit matters. The $20, the $100, every bit matters. We only exist because we get private funding. We have to raise the money to keep the lights on. So please click on that donate button.
Another way to do it is go into Real Talk with Keith Smith on the Partners tab and click on the icon there.
Brittany Gray says, I really love, in all caps, when Neil Williamson comes on, and I'm seeing this on multiple comments. Guys, Neil Williamson is awesome. Awesome guy. The kind of guy that you want to share a meal with, belly up to a bar with, watch the game with, and certainly support the Free Enterprise Forum. The show is archived, for those who are asking, on realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Fantastic website. If you could preview Monday's show.
Yeah, so Monday, I'm excited. We're going to have Nikki Chambliss in the house, and we're also going to have Woody Fincham in the house. We're going to be focusing on the other side of the mountain, the real estate market. So Mondays are going to be more real estate focused, market focused on the end of it. So keep an eye on Real Talk with Keith Smith under the market reports. I'm dropping in reports, and on Sunday I'll get them off to Judah so he can load them in. I got to do the work yet.
Judah thanks you.
Sorry,
thanks.
Judah. I got to do the. That's a lot of work on the other side of the mountain because I've got to break it up into different jurisdictions. So
I'm sharing the link of the Free Enterprise Forum across social media right now. Judah Wickower is our director. Not only does he keep us online, occasionally he's running out packets of information to clients in front of the studio live during the show. That literally just happened.
and for my Fulvana peeps, next Friday we'll have Chris Fairchild and Moselle Booker in here.
There you go. Judah, thank you. Appreciate you. That's the show. I Love Seville shows up in 45 minutes. For those that are asking, we'll take the clip of Neil talking about Jefferson Vineyards and replay it on our 12:30 show because I thought it was very insightful. Thank you kindly for joining us. So long, everybody.